already the damage was so much. So the government issued 2 liters of monocrotophos free of cost to every farmer. So the farmers who killed themselves, they consumed that poison. 6 ml of poison is enough to take the life of the farmer, strong Andhra Pradesh farmer. But at the time, when the insects are moving like this, they took one insect and introduced it into the bottle. It is the raw solution of 1 liter bottle of monocrotophos. The insect just started swimming. It is not at all affected. No water is added. It is full poison of 1 liter. The insect is not bothered. Then the scientists who traveled with me, they were shocked. And they took the insect to the lab. Under 10 generations, it was grown in the lab. And the 10th generation, when they applied the pyrethroid pesticide, it was simply resisting it, no reaction. So like that, 300% immunity is developed by the insect. Now no solutions are available. Farmers are spending lots and lots of money to control the insects, to control the diseases. Nothing is working out. Natural system and the protection mechanisms, everything failed. They lost the traditional knowledge also because for the past 2 generations, they were taken in the other road. So most of them, they didn't even connect it to their traditional knowledge and practices. So now this is agri-business. They don't know the rules of this business. Agriculture is the one, 10,000 years heritage we have, but now it is under the business regime. And market-driven forces are the one exploiting our country, and every farmer in India is the potential market for the huge corporations. So it is starting from seed, then fertilizer, and then pesticide, and finally they are the people at the pharmaceutical companies also. So it is a vicious cycle. When we came to know all these things, we really wanted to support our farmers. So myself and my husband, at the time he was the aviation officer in Indian Navy, every day it is my thing, I share a lot of information to him. He is the only person available. After visiting all the people, all atrocities, I told everything to him. He also disturbed very much. So I told him we couldn't continue our life sitting in the city doing whatever we do. It is not possible for us. Now we have the information, the technology, and many of the Indian farmers, they expect that information. So every day we receive the calls. I am afraid to say a no to anyone because the call is between life and death. So saying a no is very, very tough for us. So we decided to move out of Coimbatore, my hometown. My parents and his parents are very, very unhappy because at the time I am 30 and he is 31. I am working under the government organization, government department, and he is central government, I am state government employee. And 28 years of service is remaining. So everybody in India, you can very well understand, if both of us resigning the government jobs, parents are very, very unhappy. But we started moving from place to place, started educating people at different parts of India. That is how our organization started. So, even though we started our journey at 2002, formally we registered our organization at 2005 at the backdrop of tsunami. Now we do a lot of research. Research is our priority, and also dissemination of information from entry level to expert level. We provide a lot of skill development programs to farmers, policy makers, media people, youth, children, like that. So campaigns and publications part of our work. So far we reached 1.1 million plus farmers. We trained them. There is lot of scope for the alternative agriculture. There is no need to kill yourself. So wherever the problems are there, wherever people are expecting our support, we travel and we stayed with them for a couple of seasons and we teach our methods, and till they receive confidence we were with them. So like that, so far we trained 1.1 million plus farmers from different parts of the country. Starting our travel from Tamil Nadu, we have a vehicle, Scorpio Mahindra, which has a lot of space at the back. So we carry slide projectors and the audio systems, booklets, screens, our beds, beddings, food, everything, and Wheels on Life. Every time we travel from Tamil Nadu to Sikkim, crossing Nepal and the other route. So now we are connected to 700 organizations throughout India. Most of them are farmers associations. And traveling and meeting people, educating them is our main commitment. And because of our tsunami relief work, every organization and nations, government started calling us when the disasters are coming. So after that, our life becomes a disaster actually. So for the people at the disaster area, for 6 months or 7 months, they have to be very, very tough their life. But after that, slow by slow, they will come back to the normalcy. But for us, one disaster to another disaster, so traveling to places affected, no roads, no electricity, you have to start from scratch. So that is what our life. So now at present we are working with the Kadalur people, the farmers of Kadalur, whose lands were completely collapsed by the last year floods. This is the 23rd disaster. Now we are working. And seed saving is one of the main components we have in our agenda. So the seeds, our time-tested seeds, folk seeds, they are the one under any stressed condition, their performance is assured. But the company seeds or the market-driven seeds, they are like the patients in the ICU. You couldn't believe them because you have to provide all the opportunities, all the requirements. Then also the performance is not sure. And we are discussing about global warming impact of it in huge terms. But it results in the life of the farmers and the fishermen at the ground level. So seasonal rainfall pattern completely collapsed. Wherever you travel in India, if you encourage people, prolonged drought or sudden outburst of rains, this is the pattern now. Because if you have seasonal rainfall, you can make a calendar of activities, you can predict it and you can plan and do according to it. But now only cyclonic rainfall. Because of that, lot of rainfall or within a short span, outpour of this water. So because of that, every time the farmers are not sure that the production will be there or not. So every year they are losing the crop year after year and indebtedness. So under these conditions, the farmer seeds, folk seeds, they are the one withstanding capacities, flood withstanding, disease resistant. So these are the seeds really making our farmers self-resilient and self-esteem. So wherever we go, we engage people in seed saving and restoring the folk varieties and introducing them into a wider audience. This is what our responsibility. And in this journey so far, we recovered 385 paddy varieties and 700 plus eggplant varieties. Like that, so many vegetable seeds also restored. So in this journey, AID associated with us at 2004. I still remember the first day when AID called me and introduced themselves as saying that we were very much inspired by your contribution. So we want to associate with you. So we have a program called Sathiship. Through Sathiship, we want to sponsor some of your travel and other expenses, office expenses. Shall we collaborate? Then I said, who are you? You are from USAID or you are part of Monsanto or Syngenta? Any conspiracy behind? And it's my choice to support people at India. So I don't need your support. This is for the first dialogue. So after that, several interactions and we came to know each other. And it was a blessed day. And this relationship emerged at 2004. And till today, AID is my very much friendly and reliable partner. And the volunteers of AID, AID is actually an organization like a running river, flowing river. It is not a stagnated one. So the volunteers are the one really contributing to the organization. And every time, everywhere, I meet any new volunteer who is actually carrying the same feeling. And a lot of volunteers, whenever they get time, they started traveling from here to places where I started the work, even it may be West Bengal or Rajasthan or Gujarat. They traveled to me and stayed with me for translation, documentation, and also the field level implementation. That is the way myself and aid is connected. It is not anything related to funding, because we don't have FCRA and we didn't receive any funds from aid so far. But the friendship and also the motivation, commitment by the aid volunteers is something amazing. So in this last slide, you can see a person standing near me. He is Mr. Madhusudanan, aid volunteer from Aid Boston chapter. He is a green card holder. Last year, when the Kadalur floods was there, you know, the flood was occurred on the 43rd day. But before that, 42 days it continuously rained. The last day, it was 45 centimeters of rainfall within 8 hours of time. The clouds precipitated 18 kilometers of clouds. One after the other, it poured the water in a very small area. So after flooding is over, when the farmers visited the farmlands, they were completely collapsed because the lands were not at all submerged with the flood water, but lot of sand deposit on the land. It was 15 feet height. Their houses buried inside, borewells buried, trees were removed. So it was a very, very shocking thing for them when they saw the land. So at that situation, we started reclaiming the lands and supporting them. And this volunteer from AID, he traveled from Boston to Kadalur. The climate is like yours. We also have 3 seasons. It is hot, hotter, hottest. And 118 degree is the Fahrenheit is the average temperature at that time. So he visited with a pinkish face, not married. So I told him, don't come to the field, then no girls will marry you. But every day he traveled with me in the hot sun. 3 months he stayed with me, supported me for documentation, working with the people. Like that, aid volunteers, every volunteer, we don't know their background, and they are like unsung heroes. At least myself, I am talking about these things, and everywhere I go, people are celebrating myself. But the people at the aid, the volunteers coming, doing their work, and going back to their original life, really I am respecting that relationship. That's why I am here. So my journey started this time September 11th, because this is the 25th year for AID. So AID volunteers invited me for their annual conference at the time of May, but I couldn't make it because I was completely engaged with the flood relief work at Kadalur. So I promised them before December 2016, I will be with you. So every chapter, when they approached me, I said the same answer. Now this is my commitment, my promise I have to do. 36 chapters, they invited me for this travel. So I started on September 11th, starting from Boston, and then Washington, Ann Arbor, Chicago, Troy, Michigan, Salt Lake, Colorado, Portland, Seattle, Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, and then yesterday I was with the Austin chapter. Today I am with Dallas. So much of travel, and people are thinking that more than Hillary I travel. So because of AID, today I am with you. So this is the way. Now I will take you to few of our important projects. One is the tsunami project. When tsunami collapsed the east coast of Tamil Nadu, the farmers, they were very, very shocked, because even though the coastal farmers experienced a lot of cyclones and other things flooding, tsunami was entirely new to them. Lot of salinity on the soil, and land became a salt pan, concrete structure, no permeability, no porosity, and even the perennial trees, the water is squeezed out. So at this juncture, the technical institutions, universities, they documented the soil and other things and expressed that it will take more than 10 years to reclaim the soil. So better we can give some compensation to the farmers, or we can allocate some other lands to them. But the farmers are not ready to move out of the place, because they think that if they move out of this place, they will become the refugee in their own country, and they want to be with farming. So they asked us, could you please support us to reclaim the soil? Then we said, it is very much possible, don't lose your heart. So we approached the government agencies and also 540 NGOs at the time, many INGOs, lot of money at the tsunami time, because tsunami happened at the time of December 26 Christmas holidays. So many of the foreigners, Europeans, they traveled to Asian countries, they also experienced tsunami. So their families contributed well to the tsunami projects. So lot of money, but nobody is ready to support farming people and also reclaiming these lands because they thought that it is a risk. No proven solution with anyone to reclaim the saline soils. So everybody told that if you want to help, you try with your own efforts. If it is successful, then we will come and join. So that is the time we enter into direct implementation. Myself and my husband, we select a house at the village. That house has the toilet facility, only one house. So that is the one we couldn't compromise because coming from a city background. So we started living there, and every day we started educating farmers how to get back their lands from salinity. We started documenting each and every step, EC, pH, TDS, and also microbial population, organic content, everything, because this method should be replicated in other 25,000 hectares of land because everybody is expecting the solution. So the documentation was, every day it was made with the labs associating with us. We promised it will take 6 months time, before that the reclamation will be over, but fortunately nature provided us lot of support, good rainfall and periodical rainfall at the reclamation time. So everything was in a very good full bloom. So after 4 months, the greenery was restored and every land is filled with green crops. So this impressed the media. So BBC arrived first and they made the film about our work, and after that CNN, Voice of America, Dutch Radio, like that from every part of the globe. Lot of media traveled to the village and they interviewed us and about this process, and this went to different parts of the globe. Following that, the research institutions started coming. First organization is Michigan, following them Harvard, and then California, like that several universities with the research students. They traveled to Nagapattinam and they stayed with us for a couple of weeks, and they are the one told us why our project is so significant and which is the important thing attracted them. That is, so far there is no proven solution for saline land recovery, and in the disaster situation we demonstrated the organic approaches which is cost effective and ecological. So this is the one impressed them, and speedy recovery. So after that, after the research institutions, the next visitor is Dr. Abdul Kalam. He was the President of India at the time. So when he came to know about this, he really wanted to appreciate our efforts. So he traveled from Delhi to coastal parts. He stayed with us for a couple of hours, and he motivated us very much, and he addressed the gathering, the farmers. He himself wrote a pledge and asking them, please repeat it. This is what I expect from you. What is that pledge, you know? He told, being a scientist, I understood this process is very, very tough, and how they manage it, the youngsters, educated people, sitting in the village and helping the farmers, it's really surprising. So what is the gratitude you have to show to them? You should not spend even a single rupee for alcohol. That is what you have to do. That is what the pledge he expected from the people. 2 times he said and asked everyone to repeat it. Very, very memorable moment for us. Following him, the next visitor is Bill Clinton. He was the UN ambassador for tsunami rehabilitation projects. So before he visited us, he visited Indonesia and Sri Lanka and observed the land conditions, agriculture. So when he came to know that our demonstration is successful, he said, I am really amazed by hearing your news, and we want to take it to other countries also. So could you please travel with us with UN and UNESCO to take this message to other countries? Then we said, okay, it's possible. So, but we are fearful whether these things will work out or not, we don't know, because agriculture is location specific. We are just 2. We don't have organization or people or nothing. So we said okay, and we traveled to Indonesia. It was really an interesting experience, because when we went there, we came to know Indonesia is not one country like India. It is collection of islands, 17,000 islands. Every day they took me in the small boat crossing the deep Indian Ocean, and the language, very, very tough. It is Banda Aceh, where tsunami originally started its journey in the Sumatra Islands. The Aceh people, usually the language is mixed language, Arabians, Chinese, Hindus, Europeans, they lived together once upon a time. So all the words, they were put in a mixie and made into a juice. So the language, you couldn't repeat anything. And often they say Hanna Masala. So I learned that only one word, not nothing else. It was so sad. At least I will learn 50, 60 words when I travel to other places. This time nothing worked out. And one day when we crossed the ocean, I saw a lot of coconut trees on the other side of the island. It was very, very beautiful and attractive. So I shared them. Those farmers must be very, very rich because the trees carry a lot of fruits. But they sadly said no farmers are living there, and even we are not going near that island. What is the issue? They said huge octopus are living near the island, so we are encircling it, we are not going near the island, and even they will turn the ships. My goodness, they should have told me earlier. In the middle of the ocean, they are providing all this information. Then we reach in the village. The villagers know they are waiting for me with a full feast, because after 1 year, a scientist is coming from India to support them, and they showed me all the food. Please come and have the food with us. So I was really worried because I am the only one vegetarian in my family of 52 members. But now I don't know what is available for me. So I just smelled everything, and everything is with the seafood smell. So I apologize. I'm sorry I couldn't eat these things. If you provide me fruits and vegetables, I will be more comfortable. They were so sad. They told me, yearly once we make a special food because it's a costly food, and for the guests like you, we prepare that food. So at least, please try this. So I smelled this. No smell comes like seafood because a lot of masala. But still I have a doubt. So I asked them, could you show me the raw material? Then it will be helpful. Okay, then they took me to the garden. Something is hanging long. It was a dried one like banana leaf or something. So I am little comfortable, okay, some vegetable material. Anyhow, I went near to that, two eyes blinking on me. Then I asked, oh, what is this? Could you please draw the picture? Because language problem. Aceh language, very, very tough to understand. Whatever they said, we couldn't understand. So they draw the picture, it is octopus. Finally, I thought that octopus is more dangerous, but these people are more and more dangerous than octopus. And one season, the octopus are traveling near the shore, and they have the bamboo weapon. They are running with the speed of octopus and hunting that animal. And when I asked what is the name of this island, they said it is Gula Nasi, that is nasi. What is that? It is boiled rice, that is raw rice. These are the names of the islands. Oh my God, what is the difference? So they put the rice in the bowl, added water, and just buried it inside. After 10 minutes, the rice was cooked. Oh my God, where is the stove? They said the volcanoes and the hot springs inside, they are preparing the food. And everywhere I travel here, I should be very, very careful, otherwise I will fall down. This leg is shortened. So the floor is slippery. The board is there, I walk little by little. But there, the floor is slippery all the time. 7,000 earthquakes in a year. So mild shocks. When you are eating food, the tumbler will go this side, plate will go, floor will move. After effects of earthquake, minor earthquakes. During sleeping, the pillow will go, and taking bath, the bucket will move. You have to adjust with the slippery floor every time. But I came to know what is tsunami only when I lived in Indonesia. Because one day they took me to a village where huge ship with 200,000 tons of weight is just standing above the houses. It is in the 11 kilometers away from the shore. The ship is just carried away by the waves. And now nobody has the energy to take it back. So the local communities, they converted that into a marketplace and also government office. So 500 rooms are available. They travel in the ladder and using it as the potential. So like that, after all the work is completed in 32 islands, I asked them, what is the meaning for the word Hanna Masala? Always you are saying Hanna Masala, that is the only word I learned because it has connection with masala, Indian word. So they said, it is no problem. Always they say no problem, because everything lost. What is the problem they want to have? Earthquakes, hot springs, volcanoes, tsunamis, and also the sea, machines, everything is lost. You have to start agriculture from the days of the nomadic life. But the self-resilient people at the Thailand, every time they say, Hanna Masala, no problem. So I traveled back to Sri Lanka. That experience was something, it was not so happy. At the time, the civil war is in its peak. So I started working with the East and North Province people, where the Tamil people are the one, and the war is ongoing. So every day 6 o'clock we have to start our journey when the curfew is released, and before evening 6 o'clock you must return to the place. The UN provided us vehicles, security and briefing is there every morning, and we have radio receivers, sirens. So 180 to 200 kilometers you have to travel to meet the people at the other end, supporting them, educating them and coming back. Initially we started this work with 7 villages. Very soon people find it very useful. Lot of people started coming because the lands they were salined, they were burned because of the bombardment of the aircrafts, and also a lot of violence on the lands. So the lands lost the productivity, people have no food to eat. So this program very interesting for them because this uses the neighborhood resources and no cost is very much involved. So people started coming to our programs, and this program started growing every day. So my team, initially I went to the island. After that a team of people. But one day what happened, a militant group, a fragmented group, they suspected us and they hijacked us with AK-47 one evening. And rescuing my team members becomes a very difficult task. Because of UN and others, we were saved. But after that I decided not to keep our staff members, youngsters at the Thailand. It was not safe for them. But for me it is a very tough decision to go back to India, because that is the time we started working with a lot of people, giving them much hope. One day I brought the lunch in my tiffin box. My lunch was prepared by our team people. That is the team assisting in my house, provided by UN. So I don't know what is the reality in Sri Lanka because I stayed in a faraway place. When I opened the lunch box, the kids playing with me, they started exciting on seeing the tomatoes and also onions. That is the time I really worried. And I asked the people why they are excited on seeing tomatoes and onions. They are very normal food. They said the tomatoes 2,000 rupees per kg and onions 1,000 rupees, so they don't have access to even this food. Said, what are they eating? Please bring your lunch box. And it was bundle, leaf bundle, and when they opened it, I saw sticky rice with chili powder. That's all they had, nothing to eat. So after that, I started working with a lot of groups to regenerate their farming activities, how to start their nutrition garden, market gardening, each and everything. So I lived there for 4 years until the civil war was in its peak at 2009 May, and 500,000 people were in the transformation, and it was one thing, positive thing in that program. And Sri Lankan Research Directorate was part of our project, and every day we provided 840 samples to them. So they validated the techniques and they found that 240% profit when compared to the previous methods used in Sri Lanka. This message, before we document, it reached the World Bank. So World Bank invited me to Washington. Why can't we scale up this project to Africa and other countries? But still, we are very reluctant to work with World Bank as a member, but some of the programs we are participating as a consultant. So after that, when I returned back to India in 2009 May, immediately Somnath called me, said to us, Revati, Aila cyclone collapsed the West Bengal, and Sundarban people, they are very poor and all their lands are salined, and could you please come and help our farmers? So we started our journey back to Sundarbans. The third day of Aila cyclone. So the journey was so good from Chennai to Kolkata, flight journey, and then from there we traveled by a Tata Sumo, and in between we have several meetings. So we reached near Sundarbans at 10 o'clock in the night. We means myself, my husband, and 2 aid volunteers. One is Tabolina, an architect, and she is now living in Seattle. And another one is Mr. Prithvi. He is also aid volunteer, Kolkata aid volunteer. So altogether, we traveled to that place at 10 o'clock. And after that, the person driver told, here afterwards, this vehicle will not go because roads are not there. Another vehicle will come. Please wait. Let him come and take you. And he went in the darkness. There is no electricity in the area. Not that day. Till today, there is no electricity in Sundarbans. 100,000 people are living without electricity for hundreds of years. They are not blessed to have electricity. So the vehicle finally arrived at 11 o'clock. And what is that, you know? Just the motor engine and a wooden plank. And no roof, nothing. And 2 of us, motor people, asked to sit on both sides and other lame persons on the back. So the vehicle started moving in the single road, 1 feet road, and it was a tick 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 sound, very rhythmic, and full moon day. This side Mother Ganges, this side forest, mangrove forest. We don't know anything about that place. Full moon day, no, we were with a full mood. So we started singing horrible songs and we reached the place. After that, the person told, here afterwards, this vehicle also will not go. You have to walk in the muddy thing. Oh, muddy thing, no problem. Being a farmer, we can manage. I said like that and I stepped into the mud. My goodness, this much went inside. I couldn't take next food, next step. So my husband one side and the other volunteer Prithvi on the other side. My husband told me, oh Tamil Nadu buffalo, please plow the lands of Sundarbans, then very soon it will become fertile. Then finally we reached the place. Sundarban people, they are not welcoming us. Every people, everywhere we go, they are with full mood. But here people are shouting with the volunteers. We don't know the meaning because they are speaking in Bengali. But we understood something going on from their body language. So we asked them, what is the problem? They said, oh Didi, they took you in the very, very dangerous situation in the very remote area in the night. Oh, what's the problem? We managed. Then they started explaining. 2 Royal Bengal tigers with their cubs, they are moving here and there for the last 1 week it seems. And villagers very much worried and they are staying in the home very early, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock itself. Everybody is inside the home because of the fear of the Bengal tigers. We don't know these stories, but finally we understood because of our horrible songs. The Bengal tigers would have thought that a new animal has entered into Sundarbans. So we were survived. So Sundarban people, they are really very, very poor. And you know, their land size, it is just 1 biha, 1/3 of an acre, very small area. In it, they have a farm pond, they have the mud house, they have the goat shed, cow shed, granary. Everything is made up of the sticky mud and the straw. For the roofs, they use the straw. For the houses, they use the straw and the mud. And for the granary, once again, mud and straw. For the stove, mud. For the fuel, straw. These 2 are the resources they have. Nothing else. Very, very high level of poverty. But their self-resilience knows something beyond our imagination. When we went there, we really cried. We asked them, what do you want? We have a lot of connections with the global people. We will ask them to support you. So please tell us, do you want your houses back, roads, this and that? They said nothing. We can make our own. So they started helping each other, making the roofs, making the walls. Everything is simple. Just fitting and other thing by hard labor. And next day, they made the stove with the mud and the straw. And people are telling that Sundarban people, they don't have knowledge, they are illiterates and not educated very well, not civilized. But these people know, even after that huge disaster, after the 4th day, they started their life back. And I am comparing our lives. If there is no electricity for 3 days, at USA, how we are going to survive? Our lifts will not work, heaters will not work, and nothing will work. How we are going to survive, we don't know. But those people, after that huge cyclone Ayla, when it collapsed, then they are not worried about anything except salinity. So they asked me, could you please provide us techniques because the salinity is new to us. So we started teaching them how to recover the soils from salinity. It was a very tough time because every morning until evening, they have to work to make their roads and houses. Evening 6 o'clock, they come to our class. Till morning 3 o'clock, the classes will go, lot of translation. They will translate my statements to them. After that, if they ask something, that is translated. And again, my answers translated. Lot of effort. But the volunteers, aid volunteers, they did a wonderful role. Because of that, the transformation of technologies were made possible and people started doing it. And finally, 400 trainers were made ready. So when I started telling that, now I have to go back to my place because long months of stay, they were cried and they said, oh, you are the great person, stayed with us even in this facilities are not there. So now we want to give you some fees. What is your fees? And I said, my fees is so costly, you couldn't give back to me. They said, at least we will work for 2-3 years, we will save some money and we will send it to you because you helped us very much. Our land started producing now. I said, oh, if you are particular like that, then I will tell you the fees. Like how I trained you, each of you should train 10 other farmers. That is what my fees. So they started screaming, oh my sister, I will make 40 people. Another one said, I will make 70 when you come back next time. So I said goodbye and I traveled to Coimbatore. After 1 year for the refresher program, I visited Sundarbans. It was full of green and everywhere you have cultivation like this. And the fields carry a board. It is in Bengali. So the volunteer showed me the boards. I couldn't get the point. So I asked them, what is that? It is in Bengali. So he asked the people to write in English. Then I came to know it is SAP Revati. What is it? Sustainable Agriculture Program, teach by our teacher Revati. That is the board every land. So at faraway place Sundarbans, the people awarded me. This is the greatest award I received. So now Somnath told me the very, very positive story of Sundarbans. Sundarbans now have 22,000 organic trainers and they are training people in every island. And 4 outlets in West Bengal, that is the Kolkata city, now they opened 4 outlets. Sundarban farmers, now they are distributing their organic foods to the city people and no middleman. So now they are getting good amount, the beginners. And this is now ongoing, this project. So this field is the field now I am working at Kadalur. So this Kadalur, coming, last one. Video is not working. Okay, let me continue. So that place is not Great Canyon. It is Kadalur field. The flood now, it took the topsoil and many places, as I mentioned to you earlier, the houses buried inside. And when the people were frustrated on seeing their lands, they started migrating from the fields because they lost the hope. All the other disasters, tsunami, Neelam cyclone, Thane cyclone, they lost the crop. But this time the lands were lost. So what to do with this 40,000 tons of sand in every land? So they approached the governments. They said, we don't know what to do with this much of sand. So let us wait and see. And please continue your work with some other place. Meantime, we will come with a solution. And no solution. 2 months they wait, and after that lot of frustration, and the 6 farmers started, the suicide started and 6 of them killed themselves. That is the time, no solution for us, because when we approach so many people, every time the same story. Only for relief, lot of sympathy on people and lot of materials were dumped in the disaster areas. Once relief is over, everybody will go back. And rehabilitation is the very, very tough part and nobody will be there with the people. And starting from, everything was lost, starting from the beginning, very, very tough days. So we decided to support Kadalur people and we started the work with the Bhumi Puja. engaging people for the work. So people took part in the activity. They are the monitoring committee, documenting committee, implementation committee. Every day 6 o'clock the process starts on these vehicles, no bulldozers, they were engaged to remove the huge tons of sand, and wherever the land is taken away it was filled, the topsoil was added, lot of plastic surgery to the land. Now 45 villages completely recovered with the support of aid. This project was entirely funded by aid, not because of aid, but because of people like you. Every chapter, the people like you generously supported this project. So because of that, the people at the faraway place, we were there with the techniques, but we need machineries to clear that sand and other things. So for the machineries, this money is used. We don't have office and we don't have any people to work with us. Only the volunteer, aid volunteer, Madhu, myself, my driver and my secretary, we are the 4 people. But we engaged the farmers in this level, the community support, and we trained them, and they themselves carried this task effectively, and within 3,500 rupees we reclaimed each acre of the land. Initially it was told by the government and the other organizations as 200,000 to 400,000 per acre, but because of this way of implementation the cost was very much reduced and it was just 3,500 rupees per acre. So now we are very much progressive with these numbers. Now the farmers are in the changing over process. Now they are doing organic farming. So because of this journey, we traveled a lot. We worked with a lot of farmers, and the question is the one very much disturbing us. India being a very rich country, very rich knowledge in agriculture, we are the pioneers in agriculture, 10,000 years of heritage. Why we lost our pride? At present, every 1 hour, 5 farmers are committing suicide. That is the current status. In the last 7 years, nearly 500,000 farmers committed suicide. It's a very big number, national shame. Even in the war, people are not taken away like this. But what is the reason for that? We contributed to the global economy as a very big way, up to 55% till 1800. Even the British period, our contribution to global economy, we are the most powerful people in the world with a 55% contribution. But now, for $1, we have to pay 60 rupees. What happened to us? Why our economy is collapsed like this? So we searched for the reasons. Lot of indebtedness, climate change, crushing policies, and the immunity of the pest, like that, so many reasons. And our farmers now really frustrated. They don't have aspirations at all. Wherever we go, our first job is changing their attitude, motivating them. Afterwards, only the technology. Technical transfer, somehow it is very easy for us. But motivating the farmers is a very, very difficult task because no social recognition for them. Nobody is respecting the farmers. Every farmer thought that he is an unnecessary person in the country. If you approach the government people, policy makers, planners, they are telling that why so many farmers in this country, like Europe and North America, 3% of the farmers are enough. So many farmers, that's why so many problems, fragmented lands, not productive much. This is what the government is thinking. Bureaucracy is thinking about farmers. And if you reach the farmlands, if you are talking to farmers, they are saying that even their children don't have respect for farming. And many times the farmers are crying with me, their children are forcing them to sell the land for getting an education, higher education like MBA. So sometimes the farmers ask me, MBA is so much important, then if you tell me, then we will sell the land. But after selling the land, we have to commit suicide because we don't know anything else, how we are going to continue our life. So under this situation, I asked them, please bring your children. Then I will talk to them. I will try to clarify the situation. So when the children, students are coming to me, then I will ask them, so are you going to study MBA? It is your priority? Yes. Yes, ma'am. It has a lot of opportunities. Then I can make more money and I can buy some other land for my father after I earned money. But now we need this land to be sold. Then only we can get money. Okay, what is the major subject you want to study in MBA? Somebody will say finance management, other one will say human resource management, market management. Okay, very good. So do you want to meet a person with 32 MBA? Then the person will be surprised. The person studied 32 MBA? Madam, is there 32 MBAs available? It's really surprising. Yes, it is there. So, do you want to get introduced? Yes, absolutely. So I started telling them, to get one successful crop, a farmer should manage 32 things simultaneously. If one get failed, the crop loss. So starting from soil management, seed management, water management, disease management, pest management, climate management, water management, labor management, and market management, finance management, like that 32 things he has to manage successfully. If one fails, if disease management, if he failed, completely lost. Market management, complete loss. Climate management, complete loss. If he selected the wrong seeds, no seed management, and not properly raising the seedlings, completely the result will go. So agriculture is the one very, very stressful job. So you have to provide support to your father. Because of your father, he is not corrupted. He is not power-centered. But he is working hard to make food for everyone in the nation. And because of that, now he is very tired and his lands also under fatigue. So this is your time to support your farmer father. Then he will come out of this situation and he will support you and to the nation. So their sons know, they understood the situation, and then they will show some hope. And they also participating in our programs as volunteers. This happens every time. So we have a training institute. So we select lead farmers from the community, and we expect a social contract from them. So we train them from seed to harvest the alternative technologies, and then send them back to the communities to support those communities to start their agriculture in a more prospective way. Our training programs, every day we have programs like this. So our programs, I will take you one link journey in the program. So the farmers know, most of the farmers very much worried about insects, because insects are the one making them very, very scared about the situation. So every class they will ask, if we change our methods, what will happen? The insects will come and eat everything. That is what their problem, their mindset. So we started telling them, all the insects are not pests. There are two types of insects. One is the harmful insect, which is killing your crop. But there are other insects, they are the beneficial insects. They will take a control over your insects. Oh, there are two insects and harmful, beneficial, very confusing. So we adopted new techniques according to their understanding. So our classes are like this. So there are two types of insects. One is the vegetarian insect, which is eating the crop. But there are other insects, they are non-vegetarians. They are the one taking control over these insects. So don't worry about the insects. They have balance of system. If you make your agro ecosystem once again balanced, so there is no need for the pesticides. It is the poison. There is no need to use it. So when the farmers are going to the shop, lot of bottles available. There is no entomologist or an expert is available for the farmers. Only the market-driven person. So these bottles know everything is English. Most of our farmers couldn't understand what is it. It is whether it is a nematicide, fungicide, or pesticide. Nothing. Finally, suicides. So this bottle carries only one symbol, a skull and two bones, saying poison. That is the only message they can get. See here, American farmers, they have a lot of rules and regulations. So initially when we saw that person, we thought that he is an astronaut because of the way of dressing. But finally the farmers laughed at us and told us they are the people for applying the pesticide on their fields when we were at NASA last visit. But our farmers know, they don't know the consequences. They are systemic poison, but removing all the dress with a minimum dress, they are spraying the pesticides, and the result is carcinogenic diseases. Then we educate our farmers and explaining them the stories of Kasaragod. These people, they are not the alien people. They are the people, very, very cursed people who lived in Kasaragod and the place in Kerala. So the Kerala Cashew Corporation, one day it decided to remove the forest floor, and it started in 1971, and they planted cashew trees everywhere in the forest and spraying lot of endosulfan through helicopters to control the insects. So from 1971 onwards, this has continued every year. And the helicopters, when they travel into the forest line in the cashew canopy, the transmitters are there, power transmitters. So they travel at a height and sprayed the poison in the air. So air and water highly contaminated, and the helicopters are not stopping. In between, schools are there, playgrounds are there, grazing lands, everything is contaminated. A doctor who worked there for several years, he had patients like this. The babies are like this, with big head, lot of gene mutation. And this boy, when he passed away, he was 27 years old. He couldn't recognize mother or dog or something else. Like that, every house has children. So a lot of deformalities. When the toxicology people visited there, they tested the blood samples of 3,500 youngsters, and they find out their blood plasma was contaminated with endosulfan. So the whole world was shocked on hearing this news. So our farmers, they don't know all these stories. So we shared them. If you touch this thing, then what is the problem? The companies will benefit, but our future generations with the carcinogenic effects. So when they ask us, so what is the alternative? So we explain them, you are very well blessed, don't worry. You have an army of people. The spiders are our friends. They are the ground force, police. So when anybody is entering into the system, they have the webs, so they are not permitted to get into the plants. They are your friends. If you spray the pesticide, your friends will be eliminated and the insect will develop immune system. So like that, the dragonflies, they are the helicopters, Air Force. They are traveling to each and every leaf and they search. If anybody is there without passport and visa, immediately they will be evacuated. Like that, many ways of protection by Mother Nature. See, in the middle you have one vegetarian insect. So if you count the non-vegetarian insects in your ecosystem, they are just 32 or 64 like that. So survival of the pest becomes difficult. See, they are the hunters. Initially farmers thought that they are the vegetarian insects, pests. But when we explain this, how they are hunting the other insects, how they are part of the ecosystem, then they can understand their way of working. So wherever we go, our final word is this: please be a butterfly. That is what? What is it? A butterfly, when it is in the stage of a young worm, it is like us, like the American consumers, whether it is necessary or not, lot of exploitation of nature and eating too much, and obesity is developed. After that, it couldn't walk. That is the time it started realizing its mistakes, and it undergoes starvation, it builds a nest around it, and a lot of self-realization, tearing their skin many times, and meditation. With this activity of the small worm, Mother Nature, she is very happy, and she took pity on it, and she blessed the worm. Here afterwards, there is no need to crawl. Now, you reduced your burdens. The loads were removed. So you become lightweight. So you can fly like a monk with a colorful wings, and you can visit many flowers and say hello to each flower and spread the message of evolution by cross-pollination. So after that, the worm, it converted into a butterfly in the same birth, and it is traveling to every plant saying hello. There is no need to chew the food, but now it is blessed with a straw, and royal honey is available for the butterfly. So it is tasting it, and it is taken the pollen grains in its wings and legs and carrying it to the other flowers and supporting evolution. So even a small butterfly is taking its food from nature, but at the same time, no flower is complaining that the butterfly is making harm to me, lot of exploitation, nothing like that. But butterfly is contributing to nature. So like that, we are also part of nature. We are not anybody is separated from nature. So if we realize that we are also part of nature, so we can minimize our exploitation and taking more things from nature and leaving more and more carbon footprints and loading our earth with our activities. Instead of that, we can be a part of nature. That is what we are conveying in every program, whomever visiting, whomever is with us. So our interest is making everyone aware of that. Our earth is like an apple. So if you cut our earth into 4 pieces, you could very well remove 3 pieces because that is ocean. Only 10% of the food is coming from ocean. So remove 3 pieces and only 1 piece is now available with us. That is the land. It is also completely productive because mountains are there, plateaus, deserts, and also concrete jungles, roads, airports, many of the development activities. You remove everything and the saline soils also. Then what is remaining? A small portion. In that small portion also, just the topsoil, 9 inches topsoil is the productive one. So from there only all of us, 7.5 billion of people and all the insects, birds, everyone should get their food. So if any soil is contaminated, we are moving to their people and supporting them to get back their topsoil, because topsoil is the one very, very precious. If I travel through flight, everywhere I saw a lot of mountains, everywhere in US, mountains. So the mountains, lakhs and lakhs of years before, the earth was like a art ball and a lot of magma is released by the volcanic eruption. Because of that, mountains were generated and they dried after several thousand years. Afterwards, mountain like this, and then the mountains break into pieces, big stones, and the big stones change into pebbles, and the pebbles smashed into sand, and lot of compost and life activities are added into that. Then the topsoil. So for this journey, several millions of years Mother Nature spent to make it as a topsoil. And whenever I say we have to conserve nature, we have to do the environment protective activities, it is not that we have to protect the environment for the other beings or the other insects or the other animals of the earth. It is because of our survival. We have only one home to survive, nothing else. So before our arrival itself, all the insects, earthworms, butterflies, birds, plants, everybody arrived. They are our brothers and sisters. Without our presence, they could survive because they lived like that. They experienced a lot of tsunami, lot of cyclones, everything. Even then they are continuing. But after everything is made, then Mother Nature brought us to this earth. Meaning is, without our presence, they could survive. But without all of these creatures, we couldn't survive even a single day. So protecting environment and ecology is not for their sake, but for their continual in this earth. So this is what the message we want to convey to everyone. So I am really happy to be with you today evening, with all of you conveying this message. Thank you for that, patiently listening to me, all the stories. If you have any questions, the floor is now open to you. Thank you.
Why the dinner is just getting laid out, maybe 5 more minutes. So what we'll do is we'll request Somnath to get started and then we'll probably break for dinner. Just give us just almost.
So first of all, I'd like to thank Revati. It was such inspiring stories she shared with us tonight. And one of the things that came to my mind while I was listening to these stories is we take Mother Nature for granted so much, and all the blessings that come, that are granted to us by our Mother Nature, we take it for granted. So anyway, I'm here to introduce Somnath Mukherjee, Somnath Da, as we call him. Somnath Mukherjee has been with AIDS since too. You know, he started his journey by attending 8 Boston, you know, community service hours, and got very involved with the Bhopal campaign and began a part of the newly formed Northeast Cell and Environment Cell. He started writing for 8 publications over the years, numerous articles, press releases, project site visit reports, annual reports, position papers, as well as several opinion pieces published in Indian dailies, bearing testimony to his excellent, you know, writing abilities. Somnath, along with some other volunteers, actually set upon the task of rebuilding the Boston chapter. And Boston chapter has now become one of the most active chapters in AID. His trips back to India always included extended visits to areas where many of our long-term partners, like Samaj Parivartan Samuday, Jan Swasthya Sahyog, Bhopali Survivors, Mandra Lions Club, AID India, and other works are ongoing. After Cyclone Aila in 2009, Somnath coordinated the relief and rehabilitation efforts by AID chapters in US and India, and connected our partners in Sundarbans with Revati. The collaboration proved very effective as the farmers who were trained in organic techniques were able to reclaim their lands for cultivation within a few months. And some of it you heard Revati also describe. Since then, organic farming movement that begun with only 20 farmers has spread to nearly 10,000 farmers in the region and is gaining momentum rapidly. Somnath has spent a significant amount of time on the ground with the farmers in Sundarbans on his visits in India. He's also served on the AID Executive Board. He's our key activist, and he's appeared on various forums presenting AID's perspectives, stands, and works in Chhattisgarh, Bhopal, and Sundarbans. With that, I'd like to welcome Somnath Da, and I'll let him take over from here.
Thanks, Shweta. I'll very briefly give you an overview of the work that AID is been associated with, and you got a good understanding, hopefully, of the work that Revati has been carrying out for so many years with so many people. But I will just give how, you know, the volunteers who are working here day and night, how we connect to the work in India with partners like Revati and others. So as you know, AID works in many spheres of the work, whether it's agriculture, health, women's empowerment, you know, resisting caste-based discrimination, class-based discrimination, gender, and also the ecology, and how Revati is nicely connected. The agriculture and ecology are very, you know, almost inseparable. But making all of these possible are, you know, first of all, donors, many who come and support the work, but also get involved, become volunteers, and many times also become grassroots activists and go to India, like the case of Madhusudan that Revati was talking about. He's all of these together. He's a grassroots activist, he's a donor, and he's also a volunteer. So it's through this circle that all our work is possible, and that's how we connect to the grassroots issues in India. So AID has been around for 25 years now. It started in 1991, and when we were starting out, a lot of our work was, you know, sort of a proof of concept. Does it work? Does this work? You know, understanding the partners, understanding the perspective of the people who are at the receiving end of discrimination or oppression. But over the years, you know, we have learned with our partners, And we have learned to follow the lead of the people in India, of the farmers, of the health activists, of the educators who are walking through the forests, through the villages of India and gaining the experience that we would not find in a book or a website. So these are the people we think who our leaders are. Now on 25 years, there are certain aspects of the work that we are consciously trying to scale up, and that's where we really need the support of people like you. You know, just going back to the story of the Sundarbans that Revati was saying, in 2009 when ILA happened, the reason we came to know that we should be working on agriculture is because we were listening closely to the people. And that is one thing we learn to do in our work, is to make us conscious so that we listen to the people's voice. And it is through their voice we understood that we should be working on agriculture. And because they had predicted that agriculture would break down and there would be hunger and famine-like situation, which actually happened. But since we had listened to it, we had invited Revati to come to Sundarbans and train people in how to work on this salinated land, how to take forward agriculture. But it started with only 25 farmers, which was a daunting task at that time. Although agriculture broke down, these 25 farmers had miraculous results. And it was so inspiring to them, to us, and anyone who was remotely even connected to that work. So we sat with the farmers and said, how do we take this forward? They said, we need Revati to come back again and give us a little more strength, but we will be able to take the work forward. So then in the following years, these farmers became the trainers for other farmers and started training others. And as you heard, starting from 25 farmers, today we are working with more than 20,000 farmers. And this was no mean task, as you can imagine. But as much as impressive this end of the graph looks like, but the real power and the courage was at this end of the graph, when there wasn't any support. Only a few people supported, few people believed, and we had Revati to lead the ship, because it was just despair all around. But that is when we took up this work with our partners, and that is the kind of transformation these efforts can make, where you come in, everyone comes in, and they have this trust or faith that, okay, this might work. And we are talking about some of the poorest people in India who subsist on 1/3 acre of land. So today, that, as Revati has mentioned, it is a movement, and it's transforming not only the lives of these farmers, it's transforming society, because it's bringing about the consciousness even in very rich and powerful and elite people, what is the need for sustainable agriculture on this earth. So that is the kind of transformational work that we have been doing. And again, like Revati pointed out, today after 7 years, these farmers are supplying organic vegetables to 4 outlets in the city of Kolkata. And these are perhaps the only accessible outlets. There are some organic outlets, but very expensive, that even middle class and lower middle class people cannot access. But our aim is to be making it accessible even to the people in the city. So it should be at an accessible price. So that's one story of mindful scaling that I wanted to share. That this was done very consciously, and it was done with the intent and the participation of the farmers, of the people who are affected. Right? So this is a very rough estimate of how many kilograms of chemicals were eliminated because these farmers have, and this is only up to 2013. In 4 years, it's a conservative estimate that 75,000 kilograms of chemicals did not go into the soil. So you can imagine the kind of transformation this has. and this has no boundary. Chemicals or pollution, you know, they don't respect national boundaries. So, you know, what we are doing here is affecting the people in Sundarbans. What people in Sundarbans are doing is affecting people here. So you can put visas and all kinds of regimes will not be able to stop climate change or, you know, the destruction of the environment. So, you know, and this affects our health and a lot of people's health. And some of the people's whose health is affected the most are the farmers themselves, because they are at the closest source of the poison, using the pesticides with their bare hands and such. But where do these people go when they are sick? And you can imagine that the health of a poor person is their most valuable asset. If a poor person loses their capacity to physically work, they lose their life. You know, they cannot sit on a computer and you know, work. So health becomes an extremely important asset to poor people in India. And ironically, they have the least access to any facilities of healthcare. So how do we go about bringing that change in India? How can India develop when 1/3 or 1/4 of its population doesn't have access to